"I can't have kids," the obese girl cried, but the mountain man smiled and said, "All I ask for is you." The Wyoming sun hung low over Pine Hollow, turning the sky crimson as the dust of the drought-choked road swirled through the air. The town was small but merciless, a cluster of false front buildings clutching at the little money still to be squeezed from the soil and the cattle. The people were hardened and bitter, always alert to find someone weaker to blame for their own misery. That someone was almost always Ella Carter. At 19, she was already bowed under the weight of life's injustices. Her world had been unkind from the beginning. Ella's late mother had been known around the county as the soft one. Grace Carter's laughter used to fill their small homestead, baking pies and singing hymns, while her husband, Matthew Carter, worked their modest patch of land. But when life got hard, and it always did, kindness became weakness in Matthew's eyes. When Grace fell ill during a harsh winter, there was no money for the doctor. The neighbors had turned their backs, whispering cruelly that Ella, then 14, had eaten half their savings and that her mother worried herself sick about that girl's appetite. By the time help arrived, Grace was gone, drained, pale, with one trembling hand still reaching for her daughter's cheek. After that, Matthew changed. He turned from a quiet man into something hollow and poisonous. He drank, he gambled, and when debts began to pile up, he found a new target for his rage, Ella. "You're the reason she died," he'd say, gripping his bottle. "You and that hulking body of yours. Look at you. Gluttony made you. Sin keeps you alive." There were nights he didn't stop at words. The bruises on her arms and shoulders healed as quietly as they had appeared. But the words? They never healed at all. In Pine Hollow, cruelty was sport. Her father's debts made Ella fair game. Women refused her service at the store. Children pelted her with mud on her way to draw water from the well. The preacher's wife once dragged her out of church mid-sermon, hissing, "God may love all creatures, but gluttony is still a sin." The baker, old Mrs. Jenkins, never missed a chance to humiliate her. "You're back again, Ella," she'd sneer. "You devour bread faster than locusts. Best leave some for the working folk." Men were worse. Rough hands grabbed her at the saloon's back door when she came delivering laundry. "Careful, boys," someone had laughed once. "You don't want to break your arms trying to roll her over." Even the sheriff looked the other way. Why bother defending the fat girl who supposedly brought misfortune with her every step? So she learned to shrink into corners, to move quietly and bow her head. Yet every humiliation carved deeper into her, not just wounds, but proof that she was the town's favorite monster. And soon rumors grew dirtier. They said she'd eaten her mother's inheritance, that she'd stolen food, that she was too lazy to marry, and that no man wanted her except for the kind who paid for something rough in the dark. By the following year, there was nothing left. The Carters had lost their land, then the mule, then the roof over their heads. Matthew Carter began drinking steady from dawn to dusk, muttering that life had cheated him. He'd stumble home spewing venom, calling Ella an ungrateful burden. To keep them alive, Ella worked wherever she could, washing linens for the boarding house, hauling sacks of flour for the mill, scrubbing the school floors on her knees until they bled. Sometimes she went 2, even 3 days without a meal. Her size remained, not from feasting, as they whispered, but from years of malnutrition slowing her body to a crawl. Hunger didn't make her thinner, it just made her weaker, wearier, and older. One evening, when she brought home a single loaf she'd bought with the last of her wages, her father slapped it out of her hands. "Bread before rent?" he barked. "Are you trying to make us beggars?" "We already are," she replied, too tired to whisper. The backhand came faster than she could flinch. That night, as she pressed an ice-cold rag to her swelling cheek, Matthew's drunken voice carried from the next room. "I'll find a way to settle my debts," he muttered, "and you'll finally pay your worth." The next week, old Harlan Rush rode into town, the richest and most loathed man in the county. Rush owned half the ranches for miles and the saloon too. His cruel grin was as wide as his belt, and rumor said he bought women the same way he bought cattle. Ella didn't know it when Rush's buggy stopped at their shabby shack, but inside, over cheap whiskey and debts scratched on scraps of paper, her father sold her. She's strong, big. Good for work, Matthew said, laughing bitterly. And Harlan, let's be honest, you've never been picky if the price is right. Rush grinned, his yellow teeth gleaming. For the right sum, Carter, I'll pay your debt. But strength's not all I'm buying. I'll need an heir. My young wife's gone barren, and I'll not die without a son to carry my name. Matthew's lips twisted. She's young enough. Maybe your luck will turn. What if she can't? Rush's voice was oily. Carter's shrug was cruelly careless. Then she'll still work till she drops. For what I owe, it's fair trade. He signed the contract with trembling hands. Harlan Rush ran his eyes over Ella, as though already confirming his purchase. When? Tomorrow, her father said. 500 in cash. When Ella overheard, everything inside her shattered. That night she sat outside the shack, sobbing quietly under the skeletal cottonwood tree. The moonlight made everything cruelly visible. Her swollen face, her cracked hands, the hopelessness that had become her shadow. She thought of running, but to where? The next town was 3 days' walk, and she had neither food nor coat. And what would she do when she got there? Another place full of whispers, more judging eyes, more laughter. Inside, her father was drinking again. You should be grateful, girl, he shouted through the warped boards. Rush will feed you better than I ever could. Grateful for being sold. When she finally crawled into her corner of the shack, sleep didn't come. Her stomach ached from hunger, but worse was the sickness in her chest, the knowledge that tomorrow she would stop being a person altogether. The next morning, the town gathered near Rush's saloon. Word of the sale had spread fast. Nothing delighted Pine Hollow more than public humiliation. They came in droves, the baker's wife clutching her rosary, boys gawking and jeering, men placing mock bets about how long Rush's new cow would last before collapsing under him. Ella didn't cry. She was beyond tears. Her father stood beside her with a crooked grin, his breath reeking of whiskey. Rush climbed onto the platform beside her, his voice oily and self-satisfied. A debt's a debt, he said to the crowd, and this big girl here's payment come due. She'll serve well, one way or another. The laughter was merciless. Someone shouted, "Better reinforce your bed, Harlan." Another added, "Make sure she don't eat the cattle feed." Ella's vision swam. The humiliation pressed down like a physical weight. She had dreamed as a child of escaping this town, maybe becoming a school teacher, maybe just finding one place where she wouldn't be mocked. And now she was livestock in the square. But then the world shifted. Just as Rush held up the contract, ready to announce the terms, a voice cut through the crowd. "I'll pay the debt myself." The laughter stopped. Heads turned toward the edge of the square, where a tall figure stood in the shadows cast by the old blacksmith's forge. He stepped forward, slow but sure, broad as a bear, with a thick beard and gray eyes sharp as steel. His clothes were weathered, his face lined by mountain cold, yet his presence commanded silence. "Who the hell are you?" Rush snapped. "Name's Jack Tanner. I trap out of the Bighorn Range." He untied a leather pouch from his belt and tossed it onto the table. The heavy thud of gold coins silenced every remaining whisper. $500, gold, settle Carter's debt. Matthew staggered forward, wild-eyed. "Who? Wait, you can't just—" "I can," Jack said evenly, "and I just did." Rush glared. "You can't steal my property." Jack's stare was cold enough to freeze river ice. "She's not property, Rush." He turned toward Ella, and for the first time she saw his face clearly. His gray eyes softened, recognition flickering. "She's Ella Carter, daughter of Grace Carter, and she deserves better than this." A ripple ran through the crowd. Grace's name still carried a faint echo of respect even years after her death. Everyone had loved her singing voice, her kindness, her soft hands that baked bread for hungry children. The contrast between her memory and the auction before them left the townspeople uneasy. Rush sputtered, "You planning to make her your wife, Tanner? You'll regret it. She can't give you heirs. Too heavy for it, I bet." Jack's voice went low and dangerous. "I didn't come here to trade insults." He turned to the justice of the peace standing near the crowd. "Write it up. I paid the debt. The girl's free." Free. The word pierced Ella like light after years of darkness, but she was too stunned to react, too broken to believe it could be real. Jack extended a rough, calloused hand toward her. "You're coming with me, Ella." Her father opened his mouth to protest, but Jack's gaze made him shrink back. For the first time in her life, Matthew Carter had no power over his daughter. He pocketed the gold, muttered something about finally being rid of her, and stumbled away. The crowd parted as Jack led Ella toward his horse, waiting just beyond the edge of town. Whispered rumors swirled, some calling her lucky, others predicting she wouldn't last a week in the wild with a man like that. Ella didn't care. For the first time, no one was shouting at her. For the first time, her father's voice was gone, and for the first time in forever, someone had wanted her alive, not sold, not broken, alive. Yet still, fear gnawed at her heart. Who was this man, really? Why save her? She watched the muscles move under his weathered coat as he untied his horse, his hands precise but gentle. He wasn't the kind of brute Rush had been, she could tell that much. But the mountains he spoke of were vast and wild, far from everything she'd ever known. And as she climbed onto his horse, the sun blazing over Pine Hollow fading behind her, Ella Carter didn't dare believe in hope. Not yet. All she could do was hold on tight and pray that, this time, kindness didn't come with cruelty hiding underneath. They left Pine Hollow at dawn the next day. Jack rode a large black horse named Gunner, while Ella sat behind him, her meager belongings stuffed in a cloth sack. She hadn't spoken much since the auction. Her throat was tight with humiliation and confusion. Who was this man? What did he want with her? Jack finally broke the silence as they rode into the foothills. "You don't remember me, do you?" Ella frowned. "Should I?" "Jack Tanner. Used to live out near Willow Pond before my family moved to the mountains. We went to school together when we were kids." Ella blinked, and suddenly a memory surfaced. 2 children sitting by a creek. A boy with laughing gray eyes daring her to race across the rocks. A girl, her, falling in, soaking her dress, both of them laughing till they couldn't breathe. "Jack?" she whispered. "That Jack?" He nodded. "It's been a long time. But you left when we were 12. "Yeah, Father got sick. Ma didn't make it through winter after he passed. I headed for the hills and never looked back." Ella was quiet for a long time. Why save me like that? You didn't have to." Jack's expression darkened. "I was in town 2 days ago selling pelts. Heard men talking about the auction, heard them laughing, about what Rush wanted you for." His hands tightened on the reins. "Couldn't let that happen. I know what people say about you," she ventured softly. "They call you the Beast of Bighorn." She hesitated. "They say you kidnapped women before." Jack snorted. "People say a lot of things about folks they're afraid of. I've lived alone too long, that's all. Makes their imagination run wild." "So why me?" Ella asked quietly. "Why pay $500 for me?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said simply, "Because I remember the only girl in that schoolhouse who never laughed when I couldn't read aloud. You used to help me after lessons. You're a good person, Ella. Didn't seem right to let bad men destroy that." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had spoken kindly to her in years. "But you're not my servant," Jack continued firmly. "You're free. I don't own you. If you want, I'll take you to Sheridan once I restock supplies there. You can start fresh, away from Pine Hollow." Ella hesitated. Freedom sounded like paradise, but the thought of walking into another town alone, another round of mockery, stares, rejection, made her chest ache. "I'll help you," she said softly. "At least till winter." Jack glanced over his shoulder, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Then it settled. And for the first time in years, Ella felt safe. Jack's cabin sat high in a mountain valley surrounded by pines and wildflowers. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, and nearby, a herd of elk grazed peacefully. The first time Ella saw it, she caught her breath. "It's beautiful." "Hard work keeps it that way," Jack said, dismounting. "There's water from the spring, cellar storage, and the smokehouse out back. Roof needs fixing before snow, though." Over the next few days, Ella threw herself into work, cooking, mending, organizing supplies. Years of hard labor at home had made her skilled, though she'd never been appreciated for it. Jack noticed everything. "You're good in the kitchen," he said one evening. "Reminds me of Ma. She used to say food was a kind of love." Ella smiled faintly. "My mother said that too." They worked side by side through the summer. When Jack hunted, Ella preserved meat and tanned hides. When storms came, they read by the fire. Each day, the tension between them thawed a little more, replaced by a quiet, growing closeness neither spoke of aloud. Yet deep inside, Ella carried fear, a secret that shadowed every moment. She'd overheard her father years ago, drunk and raging about her being useless even for breeding. She'd overheard the doctor, too, whispering to her mother after a childhood illness that had caused internal scarring. It was the one thing Ella had always known but never shared. When autumn came, Jack told her he planned to make the arrangement official before the sheriff. "If we head into town next week, I can have the papers drawn. Keeps men like Rush from claiming you." His kindness carried no malice, but in her mind, his words twisted into something darker. Those men in town had talked about her being sold as a breeder for Rush's ranch. What if Jack expected the same? That night, sitting by the fire, she whispered, "Jack, I have to tell you something." He looked up from his chair. "What is it?" Tears filled her eyes. "I can't have children." Jack blinked. "What?" "I was sick when I was little. The doctor said it left scars. Inside. I can't be a wife to you that way." She swallowed hard. "If that's why you bought me to start a family, then you wasted your money. I'll leave tomorrow." For a long moment there was only silence, the fire crackling softly. Then Jack stood and crossed the room to her. He knelt beside her chair, his large, calloused hand covering hers. "All I asked for was you," he said quietly. "Not children, not service, just you." Ella looked up through tears. His eyes glowed softly in the firelight, steady and true. "You mean that? I'm a mountain man, Ella. I don't lie. You being here, it's enough." She broke down then, sobbing into his chest, the weight of years of fear and rejection pouring out. Jack held her while she cried, whispering, "You're safe now, always will be." Winter came early that year. The valley disappeared under a blanket of snow, trapping them for months. But in that isolation, something beautiful bloomed. They fell into rhythm, rising before dawn to tend the fire, cooking hearty breakfasts, checking traps, working wood by day, and sharing quiet evenings by lantern light. Jack was rough-edged but gentle. He taught her to shoot, to track, to fix snares. She teased him for grumbling when she outshot him one morning. "Guess all those years alone didn't make you any sharper," she said, and he chuckled, a sound she'd come to love. He built her a rocking chair for Christmas. She made him new gloves lined with rabbit fur. It was simple, domestic, and perfect. But beneath the growing affection, Ella carried guilt, because deep down she'd lied. It wasn't entirely untrue. She'd been told she might not bear children easily, but she'd exaggerated her condition out of fear, Fear that Jack, like all men, would see her only as a tool to breed. Every time he looked at her with kindness, guilt gnawed at her heart. Then one quiet evening in spring, unable to bear it any more, she confessed, "Jack, I wasn't honest with you." He looked up from where he was sharpening a knife. "About what?" "About not being able to have kids," she whispered. "The doctor never said I couldn't. He said it might be harder, but not impossible. I only told you that because I was afraid. Afraid that you'd—" her voice cracked, "that you'd only want me for that." Jack set the knife aside and came to stand before her. He said nothing for a long time, just studied her tear-streaked face. Finally he smiled. "Well, I guess we're even." "What?" She blinked in confusion. "I wasn't honest either. I knew who you were the moment I saw you at that auction. I wasn't some stranger passing through." His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek. "I came down from the mountain when I heard about your father's debts. I meant to help before Rush could buy you. You weren't just a girl from school, Ella. You were the only person who ever made me feel worth something back then." Her breath caught. "Jack, I didn't care if you could have kids or not. I didn't care what you looked like, then or now. I saw the girl who gave me half her lunch when the others called me trash, who said I should never be ashamed of where I came from." His hand cupped her face. "You saved me once. I just returned the favor." All the fear that had lived inside Ella melted in an instant. "You never cared about that?" He shook his head. "No. All I ever wanted was a home with someone who understands kindness, and I already have it." Ella burst into tears again, laughing through them this time. "You're impossible." "Maybe," he said, smiling, "but you love me anyway." "I do," she whispered. "I really do." And when he kissed her, it felt like everything broken in both of them slowly began to heal. 2 years passed in peace. Whisper Creek had long forgotten about Ella Carter, the fat girl who got sold off to the bighorns. If they'd known who she'd become, the capable, confident wife of Jack Tanner, mother to 2 happy children, they might not have believed it. Because yes, despite everything, fate had smiled on them after all. Their first child, a boy named Samuel, arrived late one summer night in 1889 after a long, tense labor. When Jack placed the tiny bundle in her arms, Ella wept silently. "You see," he whispered, kissing her hair, "mountain magic." Their daughter Grace arrived 18 months later, loud and perfect. Life in the mountains was hard, long winters, scarce supplies, but Ella never complained. She'd found purpose, building a home, raising their children, tending their little patch of world far from society's cruelty. Jack built additions to the cabin, and soon the sound of children's laughter filled the once quiet valley. At night, after the fires burned low, they'd sit on the porch watching the stars. One evening, as cicadas chirped and the children slept, Ella turned to Jack. "Do you ever think about Pine Hollow?" "Sometimes," he admitted, "but only to be grateful we're not there." "If you hadn't come that day," she shook her head. "I can't imagine." "I'd have found you," Jack said simply, "one way or another." She smiled softly, running her fingers along his scarred hand. "Do you ever regret not staying in town, having neighbors, easier life?" "I've got everything I need right here," he said. "You, the kids, peace. Townsfolk talk about paradise being gold and comfort. To me, it's quiet nights and the woman I love." Tears filled her eyes again, not from sadness, but from gratitude so deep it ached. They'd both been broken once, she by ridicule and rejection, he by solitude and scars. But together, they'd built healing piece by piece, day by day. And when morning came, the sun would rise over the valley, shining on a cabin that stood as proof that love, real love, doesn't care about appearance or reputation or scars from the past. It simply is.